Imagine a machine born from conflict, half ambition, half accident, built not because it made sense, but because pride and momentum wouldn't allow it to die. It came from a company obsessed with precision, yet ended up tangled in the chaos of Italian handcraft and German engineering discipline. It was meant to conquer racetracks, but found itself stranded on the road instead. Too pure for mass production, too expensive for its own time, too fast for a world not ready to catch it. This is the kind of story that reminds us innovation isn't always planned. Sometimes it's forced by failure, stitched together by stubbornness, and remembered because it refused to disappear quietly. Before the term supercar even had a clear definition, this machine helped write the rules, and then broke them. Stay with me as we uncover how that happened, why it mattered, and what its short, brilliant life tells us about perfection and imperfection sharing the same chassis. Like and subscribe and tell me in the comments which legend you want to explore next. The BMW M1 1978 began not as a dream of dominance, but as a desperate solution. In the mid-1970s, BMW was caught between eras, too large to be a boutique racing outfit, too small to match the industrial horsepower of rival manufacturers dominating the world's most glamorous circuits. The company had built its reputation on elegant rear-wheel drive sedans, but the spirit of competition demanded something bolder, a purebred racer that could stand toe-to-toe with mid-engine exotics. The M1 was meant to be that leap, the bridge between precision engineering and racing fantasy. To understand how this car came to be, we have to rewind to Munich, 1976. BMW's motorsport division, still young and ambitious, had tasted success with the 3.0 CSL, but needed a new icon to compete in Group 4 and Group 5 racing. Homologation rules required at least 400 road-going examples, meaning BMW had to build a car the public could actually buy, a mid-engine supercar from a company better known for practical saloons. This alone was a radical idea. Instead of developing it entirely in-house, BMW sought help from Lamborghini, hoping the Italian firm's expertise in exotic chassis and low-volume construction would fast-track the project. The collaboration was ambitious but fragile. Lamborghini, already drowning in financial trouble, struggled to deliver even basic tooling and components. Tensions rose as deadlines slipped. What was supposed to be a seamless fusion of German discipline and Italian flair turned into a logistical nightmare. When Lamborghini's finances collapsed in 1978, BMW found itself with a half-finished car, unpaid invoices, and a decision that could either save or sink its motorsport dreams. Walking away would mean abandoning years of investment and admitting failure. Pressing forward meant reinventing the project almost from scratch. Against all logic, BMW chose the latter. The BMW M1 1978 became an exercise in controlled chaos. With Lamborghini out of the picture, BMW turned to multiple European partners. Italdesign for the bodywork, Marchesi for the tubular frame, and Bauer in Stuttgart for final assembly. Each car would be hand-built, piece by piece, like a precision instrument rather than a production vehicle. The result was both inspiring and impractical. A car too refined to be mass-produced, yet too fragile to meet the demands of racing. Still, the M1's form was timeless. Giorgetto Giugiaro's wedge-shaped body captured the late 1970s obsession with aerodynamic purity and aggression. The low stance, pop-up headlights, and minimalist surfaces made it look like a concept car that had somehow escaped onto real roads. Under the skin, BMW's engineers had developed a masterpiece of an engine, the M88, a 3.5-liter inline-six with mechanical fuel injection, twin overhead cams, and a spine-tingling 9,000 RPM redline. It produced 273 horsepower in road trim, enough to push the M1 beyond 160 miles per hour, making it one of the fastest cars of its era. Yet numbers tell only part of the story. What truly defined the M1 was its balance. Mid-engine layout, near-perfect weight distribution, and razor-sharp steering gave it poise few rivals could match. It wasn't brutally fast like some Italian contemporaries. It was composed, deliberate, an athlete trained for precision rather than spectacle. But while enthusiasts saw brilliance, the accountants saw chaos. Each car took months to complete, assembled by different subcontractors across Europe, making quality control a nightmare. Costs spiraled out of control, and the M1 arrived on the market years behind schedule. Too late to dominate the racing scene it was designed for. For BMW, it was a car without a clear category, too expensive for most customers, too civil for racing purists. Yet inside the company, the M1 became a symbol of pride. Engineers and designers saw it not as a failure, but as a statement of what BMW's motorsport division could achieve when freed from convention. The car embodied the tension between corporate restraint and creative rebellion, a machine that defied its own creator's logic. Owners who managed to get their hands on one discovered something unlike anything else on the road. The cabin was sparse but ergonomic, with simple analog gauges and supportive bucket seats. Every sound, from the whir of the fuel pump to the bark of the inline six, felt mechanical, intentional. Driving the M1 wasn't about comfort. It was about connection. It demanded attention and rewarded precision, reminding you at every corner that this was not just transportation. It was an artifact of obsession. In retrospect, the BMW M1 1978 wasn't just a product of its time. It was a car from a parallel timeline where BMW became a supercar maker. It showed what happened when a company rooted in practicality flirted with the irrational allure of speed. The contradictions that birthed it, the partnership gone wrong, the impossible deadlines, the handmade assembly, made it all the more human. And while most corporations would have buried such a project after its chaotic start, BMW doubled down, transforming the M1 into a platform for experimentation and identity. What began as a business misstep was turning into a movement. The question now wasn't whether the M1 could succeed in showrooms, it was whether it could justify its existence through the one arena that still mattered most: the racetrack. The next phase would determine whether the M1 would live as a glorious accident or a genuine legend. The BMW M1 1978 entered its second act not on showroom floors, but in the unpredictable world of racing, a place that had inspired its creation in the first place. Yet by the time the car was ready, the rules had changed, and the window for homologation had slammed shut. The M1 was a racer without a race. To salvage the project, BMW's motorsport division devised something unprecedented: its own championship. The Pro Car series, launched in 1979, put identical BMW M1s in the hands of Formula One drivers and top touring car racers, creating one of the most electrifying spectacles of its era. Each weekend, before the main F1 event, legends battled in evenly matched M1s, an audacious, high-stakes marketing experiment that turned a corporate liability into a cultural event. The M1, now stripped of excuses, proved what it had always promised to be: brutally capable, surgically precise, and more than worthy of its motorsport badge. What made the Pro Car series special wasn't just the machinery, it was the message. BMW had taken a stranded supercar and turned it into a stage for heroes. For spectators, seeing F1 champions in near-identical M1s brought racing back to its essence, driver skill pure and simple. The cars looked menacing in their wide-body kits and wild sponsor liveries, the straight-six engines screaming past 8,000 RPM. Suddenly, the M1 wasn't a financial mistake, it was a superstar. This transformation marked a turning point for BMW's image. In the United States, where the M1 remained elusive due to import restrictions and cost, its reputation spread through magazine covers and television highlights. American enthusiasts saw it as forbidden fruit, a European icon that embodied everything BMW claimed to stand for: balance, precision, and technical purity. It became a symbol of aspiration, the kind of car that hinted at what the brand's future performance cars could become. Yet even with the Pro Car series generating buzz, reality remained harsh. Producing hand-built supercars was unsustainable for a company whose core business relied on volume models. The M1's complex assembly process, scattered across several countries, made every unit a logistical feat. Each car that left the factory represented a triumph over bureaucracy and coordination, but it couldn't scale. Meanwhile, regulation changes and rising costs made its racing prospects increasingly impractical. What began as a rescue operation was now a sunset performance. The M1's road version faced its own struggles. It was astonishing to drive, balanced, communicative, almost prophetic in its handling precision, but it lacked the luxury touches wealthy customers expected from a six-figure car in 1979. It was caught between worlds, too hardcore for grand touring, too refined for raw racing. Rivals were flashier, louder, easier to explain at cocktail parties. The M1 was cerebral, not theatrical. It demanded a driver's commitment, not a collector's vanity. And yet, among those who understood it, reverence grew. The M1 became a cult machine, a whisper shared among enthusiasts who valued engineering purity over fashion. It was the ultimate insider's car, the vehicle that separated casual fans from true believers. This duality gave the M1 a rare kind of immortality. As the Pro Car series ended in 1980 and BMW shifted focus to more profitable projects, the M1 quietly slipped from production. Only 453 units were ever built. But its influence didn't vanish, it diffused. Engineers who had cut their teeth on the M1 project carried lessons into the next generation of BMW performance cars. The M88 engine found a second life in the M635 CSI and the original M5, seeding a lineage that would redefine performance sedans for decades. The DNA of the M1, lightweight construction, responsive power delivery, driver-first ergonomics, became the backbone of the M Division philosophy. For the United States, where few M1s ever officially arrived, its legend grew in absence. Publications raved about its precision and composure, comparing it favorably to cars that cost twice as much. Private importers began bringing in limited examples, each one a trophy of perseverance and passion. Owning a BMW M1 1978 in America wasn't just about collecting, it was about participating in a myth. You didn't stumble upon one. You sought it out. What makes the M1's legacy so fascinating is how it thrived on contradictions. It was born from chaos, yet executed with surgical precision. It failed as a product, but succeeded as a philosophy. It never fulfilled its racing destiny, yet became one of the purest expressions of racing spirit ever sold to the public. In the process, it defined the ethos of an entire performance sub-brand without ever wearing its own success comfortably. Every car since the M3, M5, and beyond has carried echoes of that experiment. But even as its DNA evolved, the M1 remained something else entirely, a moment when BMW chased perfection for its own sake. And while few people ever experienced it firsthand, the myth only deepened with time. Today, when collectors talk about supercars with soul, the M1 sits near the top of that list, not for its numbers or victories, but for what it represents, the beautiful friction between ambition and reality. What came next wasn't about salvaging a failed idea. It was about turning that idea into a lasting identity. The BMW M1 1978 had sparked a fire that would burn through the decades, and the next chapter would show how a car once considered a mistake became the blueprint for everything that followed. The BMW M1 1978 became something far greater than its initial blueprint. It became the spiritual foundation of an entire philosophy. When the final M1 rolled off the line in 1981, BMW didn't just end a production run. It closed a chapter of experimentation that had redefined what performance meant inside the company. The lessons learned from the M1's tumultuous birth, its brief racing glory, and its slow fade into legend shaped the DNA of every M-badged car that followed. The M1 had been the proving ground, a sandbox where BMW's engineers could test theories about power delivery, weight distribution, and driver feedback. And what they learned found immediate application elsewhere. The M88 engine, the beating heart of the M1, was refined into the S38, powering the first M5 in 1985. This was no coincidence. The M1 had shown BMW that everyday usability and racing-bred engineering could coexist. The company realized that it didn't need to build another mid-engine supercar to embody that spirit. It could inject it into sedans, coupes, and later, even SUVs. The BMW M1 1978 had failed to conquer the racetrack, but it succeeded in democratizing its ethos. Through the M3 and M5, it taught the world that performance didn't have to come at the cost of practicality, that precision and passion could live in the same garage. That revelation reshaped not just BMW, but the entire performance landscape. And yet the M1 itself never truly disappeared. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, it became a collector's obsession. Each surviving car was a relic of an era when engineers built without compromise. The handmade construction, the sharp wedge design by Giugiaro, the mechanical purity, all of it stood in stark contrast to the increasingly electronic and computerized performance cars of later decades. Collectors and purists began to view the M1 not as an outdated supercar, but as a sacred artifact from a purer time. By the 2000s, as nostalgia for analog performance grew, the M1's reputation soared. Auction prices climbed, and whispers of a spiritual successor circulated every few years, rumors BMW always denied but never fully silenced. The M1's mystique thrived in its absence. When BMW unveiled the M1 homage concept in 2008, it wasn't about reviving a nameplate, it was about paying respect to a philosophy. The homage captured the wedge profile, the low stance, the twin roundels on the tail, each a nod to 1978, but underneath was a modern platform. It was BMW acknowledging that the M1 wasn't just a car. It was a statement of intent, a reminder that its greatest achievements were born from risk. In the US market, the M1's presence remained minimal, but its influence was everywhere. American BMW enthusiasts adopted the M spirit with fervor, idolizing the purity the M1 represented. The first M5s and M3s to reach US shores carried that same sharp steering, linear power delivery, and balance, the distilled essence of the M1's engineering. The irony is that most American enthusiasts never saw one in person, yet they all felt its shadow. The M1 was the myth that gave legitimacy to every ultimate driving machine that followed. It proved BMW's M division wasn't just marketing, it was earned. Beyond the performance realm, the M1 changed how BMW saw itself. Before it, the brand's image leaned conservative, focused on precision, not passion. After it, BMW embraced its duality, a company that could build luxury sedans for executives and track-ready beasts for drivers. The M1 gave BMW permission to be bold, to chase emotion without apology. Its short production run freed it from the burden of normalcy. It became an icon unshackled by practicality. Even decades later, that audacity resonates. When modern BMW engineers discuss balance, response, and tactile feedback, they still reference the M1 as a benchmark. The car's ability to blend agility with civility, its refusal to compromise either, remains a design ideal. In many ways, the M1's failure granted BMW the creative freedom it needed to become what it is today. The car's legacy isn't one of sales or trophies, it's one of philosophy. The BMW M1 1978 taught the company that authenticity matters more than approval, that innovation often begins where logic ends. And that's why the M1 endures. Every M car, from the razor-edged E30 M3 to the modern M4 CSL, carries a trace of its DNA. Every time BMW pushes the envelope, experimenting with carbon fiber, electrification, or hybrid drivetrains, it echoes that same rebellious spirit. The M1's ghost still whispers through wind tunnels and boardrooms alike, a reminder that the brand's most defining moments were born not from perfection, but from persistence. As enthusiasts, we look back at the M1 not with regret, but admiration. It was flawed, yes, but gloriously so. It dared to exist, and in doing so, it changed the trajectory of performance engineering forever. Its story is a lesson in how failure, when met with creativity, can transform into legacy. And that legacy is still evolving. The next chapter of performance, the electric and hybrid era, owes a quiet debt to that handmade six-cylinder wedge from 1978. Because before anyone thought an automaker known for sedans could build something world-beating, the M1 proved it could. The ripple effect continues generation after generation. The BMW M1 1978 has reached a point in history where myth and machinery have fused. For collectors and enthusiasts, it represents something beyond nostalgia. It's the tangible proof that great ideas don't always come from success. The M1 was conceived in chaos, built through compromise, and remembered for its purity. Today, if you're lucky enough to find one in the United States, you're looking at one of fewer than 50 examples that ever crossed the Atlantic, each worth well over $500,000, sometimes much more depending on originality and condition. Ownership isn't for the faint of heart. The BMW M1 1978 was built by hand from parts supplied by multiple European subcontractors, meaning maintenance often requires detective work and specialized expertise. Replacement components can be scarce, and restoring one properly demands patience, connections, and deep technical respect. But for those who understand its story, that's part of the reward. It's a car that asks as much of its owner as it did of its creators. For US buyers, importing one under the 25-year exemption is now straightforward, but authenticity is critical. Many M1s have been modified or partially restored. The best examples preserve the original M88 engine, ZF gearbox, and unmodified bodywork. Mechanical reliability is surprisingly solid when maintained correctly. The inline six is overbuilt and loves to rev, but neglect or poor storage can lead to catastrophic issues. This isn't a car you buy casually. It's a long-term relationship, one where understanding the engineering matters as much as the driving. And that's fitting because the M1 was never about convenience, it was about connection. Driving a BMW M1 1978 today feels like a conversation with history. The steering is heavy but communicative. The gearbox demands precision but rewards rhythm. The suspension speaks in analog language. Every input echoes the intentions of its makers. It's not about outright speed anymore, it's about purity of feedback. In an era where performance is digitized and effortless, the M1 reminds us that effort itself is part of the pleasure. It's mechanical honesty distilled into motion. For American enthusiasts, the car carries symbolic weight. It's the ancestor of every M-badged machine on the road. The car that turned a letter into a legend. Without it, there would be no M3, no M5, no lineage of everyday supercars. It's easy to forget that the M division began not with a sedan, but with a mid-engine experiment that almost didn't happen. And maybe that's the lesson. The best innovations are rarely born from comfort. The BMW M1 1978 stands as a monument to ambition, a car that shouldn't have existed yet did. Its legacy isn't measured in production numbers or sales figures, but in influence. Every engineer who worked on it left with the conviction that performance and precision could coexist without compromise. Every enthusiast who drives one today feels that same revelation firsthand. For those considering ownership, approach it not as an investment, but as preservation. The M1 isn't just a collectible, it's a cultural artifact. Keep it running, and you're keeping a story alive. A reminder of the era when courage mattered more than committee approval. Prices may rise and fall, but significance doesn't fade. Decades later, the M1 still commands respect in every circle where performance and authenticity intersect. It's proof that one bold misstep can become the cornerstone of greatness. So when you see that wedge-shaped silhouette, those twin roundels on the tail, remember what it represents. Not a failure, not a relic, but the moment a company found its identity by chasing something impossible. The BMW M1 1978 wasn't the supercar the world expected. It was the one that changed what we expect from supercars. And that's how legends begin.